Guys, one thing that I deal with a lot with clients is this belief that we're somehow damaged for life. That, oh my God, I'm gonna be, Dave says it's the outlier, but I think I'm the outlier. I'm now damaged for life. It's 6 months out, a year out, 2 years out. I'm not better, quote unquote better yet. Not meaning back to my old self. And now people are telling me, you know what? If it hasn't happened by now, it may not happen. And I'll tell you what, this belief, first off, it's not based in any real science. There's countless studies out there. You can go to Google Scholar and look up peer-reviewed research on benzo recovery and things like that. People generally do get better. I'm not downplaying how hard it is, because believe me, I went through 2 years, 40 milligrams, can't drive my car for a year. I mean, DP, DR, 3-4 panic attacks a day, 3-4 night terror panic attacks a night. I went through hell, and it took me 2 years after I came off it before I could even really drive my car, go into stores, and sort of get back to my start to get back to my old self again, right? So the message is, of course, you do heal. You will heal. You will heal. Despite what you hear, despite what everybody's saying on benzo forums and this and that, it's a lot of fear. It's a lot of people huddled together, and sort of a lot of outliers feeding each other. And listen, the benzo forums, they don't like me very much because I do say these things. And I've always been quick to say, look, the benzo forum is a lot of positive too, a lot of people that can help you with information. I think the best way to use a benzo forum is to go and find a buddy, find a friend, someone that you can sort of push each other daily and say, hey, hey Jill, what did you do today? Did you, how many steps did you take? Well, I took 500. Great. Well, I took 400. You know what? You just inspired me. I'm gonna, walk around the block or something. Or, hey, John, I got out of bed today, at 10 o'clock instead of sleeping until 12 or 2, or sitting in bed and getting on my WebMD and diagnosing myself with 95 different disorders and for 4 hours, before I got up. You hear these positive things from other people, and they just push us to do more, right? I mean, this is known in all kinds of circles, right? I mean, even in things like AA, NA, drug rehab, which is coming off of benzo, is not the same experience as coming off heroin, right? But the idea of support group and having accountability and having someone there when you get weak and you have these moments to sort of to call or text and have a conversation with and help realign your perception that, okay, this is hell, but this will pass, and I got to keep strong, and I got to keep doing the things that ultimately are going to lead to better outcomes for myself. So I'm always big on these support groups, But whenever you get a group of people who are deeply afraid and deeply wounded and going through all these things, our tendency is to huddle together, right? Like we had a big open field, and here's 90% of everybody that's fine, and here's 10% of people that are not. The 10% will come together and not in a really healthy way. It's not our instinct necessarily to come together in that way when we're that wounded and sort of lift everybody out of this situation. That's typically not what happens, actually. It's like the blind leading the blind almost at some point, right? It's the wounded leading the wounded, the fearful paralyzed leading the fearful paralyzed. So that's not typically what happens. And so we're always looking for someone above the crowd, someone who's doing a little better, someone who seems to understand the direction and able to guide us through these things. And that's what we should be going after. Instead, what you see in a lot of these forums is just the loudest, most fearful voices gain all the attention. And rightfully so. It's almost like a horror film, right? It's like Sally's story is the worst. Oh my God, you hear Sally? Did you hear Steve's story? Everybody runs to hear Steve's story. But what about Mike's story? What about Mike, 16 months out, resumed his career, got back with his family, and is making great strides. And I see this all the time with people. But where are their stories? And I've often said this, that, when we get better, we don't want to come back. We don't want to tell this story. Nobody, first off, to even put yourself on camera and start talking about all the hell you've been through is such a scary, who wants to do that? And then if you do it, you probably want to take it down soon after, once you're better, right? You're like, oh my God, there's that video of me crying and hysterical 2 years ago, So, and nobody's doing that. So when they get better, especially, you got more clarity. If they don't delete their old videos, they're probably not coming back. And so we never hear those stories. And that's a shame, because there are so many positive stories that we're not hearing. And I think if more of us heard those stories, we would have more faith We'd believe in our healing and our ability to recover, right? So, some of these false beliefs get perpetuated in these forums. They get perpetuated in many videos and comments and followers. And it's just this underlying fear that I will not get better, that somehow I'm the outlier, you know. And I always remind people, listen, even when you're looking at cases with quote unquote outliers, look at the factors, look at the variables. How old are they? Do they have pre-existing mental illnesses? And if so, what kinds? And I can tell you from being a coach that I can definitely see a separation, a distinct sort of different grouping of clients, right? Categories, I guess you could say. And the category of people that typically have the hardest time are people that are older, people that have had long histories of serious mental illness problems, borderline, bipolar, schizophrenia, panic disorder since they were in their teenage years, PTSD from war, seeing death, or multiple divorces, loss of business, health issues, disabilities. I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into this. And I think what people don't completely remember is that whatever was there prior to the benzo is going to be there after the benzo. And so one of the most common things I hear is people say, yeah, but it's 2 years out and I didn't feel this bad before I took the benzo. See, that's the assumption that when you come out of this, somehow you're supposed to go back to that normal level, that baseline. So if, I had a panic attack once a month before benzo, now I'm having a panic attack once a week. Well, why would you think that you were going to go back? How would that work? It's not accounting for the fact that you've been masking something for X amount of time, years, months, and that what you don't use, what you don't exercise, which in this case is the fight or flight part of our brain, which is very closely wired into our beliefs and our perceptions and our ideas and our symbolism. When you don't use that, when you're masking over and you're giving it a chemical that just sort of does all that heavy lifting for us, and then we come off of it, well, why would we go back to the base level? That base level is no longer a base level. Now the base level is panic attack or agoraphobia or something to that effect, right? And sure, over enough time, if you weather the storm, you do the right things, stay healthy, don't let these depression and all these mental illness things that manifested bury you, you start to get better, right? So there is something to people that just say, well, just lie in bed and you eventually heal. Yeah, I think you could, to a point of coming off the benzo stuff. You're not doing yourself any favors. You're not accelerating healing. You're not assisting in healing. You're not facilitating healing. But sure, if you lay there long enough, you could heal. On the other hand, what happens when we lay in bed for too long? We get depressed. We don't get enough sunlight. We're probably not eating right. We're not taking care of ourselves. Our anxiety and our social isolation and social anxiety goes through the roof at that point, right? Things start to build. And I'll tell you, that was the quickest downfall for me. It was when I stayed in bed for almost 6 months. It was after that point I got out. Wow, suddenly, I said, I need to get out of bed. I don't think this is working. And when I went out and tried to, drive my car again, it was panic attacks. And it was, oh my God, I had deteriorated. I had gotten much worse now, So I'm always warning people, don't do that. Go at a certain pace, ebb and flow, be kind of smart, be smart about what you're doing, but don't just lay in bed and wait for it to pass. It doesn't work that way.